Today on Rates and Barrels, we break down the American League, picking division winners, wild cards, and making our awards predictions. Let's go. Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Wednesday, March 25th. Happy opening night. Derek VanRiper, Sarris, Britt, Ghiroli here with you. On this episode, we break down all three divisions in the American League, make those award predictions, and we have some baseball news you should know as we get started. How about another extension, Britt? Pete Crow-Armstrong gets a new deal with the Cubs. We are still awaiting terms at the time of this recording, but knowing that they were working on a deal this time last year and seeing the season that Pete Crow-Armstrong put together in 2025, you can imagine that it's a much larger deal than it would have been had they agreed to terms a year ago.
Yeah, he's a guy who kind of waited, and I always think of Judge when I think of guys who wait, but obviously he didn't end up hitting free agency, but he bet on himself, and he had a great year. And I think what the Cubs are trying to build, guys, is that young core again that they had when they won the World Series. They're trying to, have these guys stick around, be Cubs for a while longer. And PCA is such a huge part of what they do. In talking to people over there, like he's everything that they want to be moving forward, and he's kind of the ideal candidate, they felt like, to, not all these guys are going to be able to sign extensions. That's true of any team with, young talent. But I think when you look at a guy like PCA, what he brings to the table, and, he had a great Team USA, WBC, like continuing to build on that. I think of Bobby Witt Jr. as another guy who really has taken that main stage and performed and really upped his presence. So for them to get PCA, I feel like if they had waited any longer, it might have gotten too pricey. So they kind of did a good job threading the needle here. I would expect that it's well over $100 million, right, for a deal like this now. Like it's just gonna have to be. And you're right, a year ago certainly wouldn't have been in that same stratosphere. So good for them, good for the Cubs. And I wonder, I think we talked about this maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, if we're going to see more extensions for players because of a looming potential work stoppage. If we're going to see guys that don't want to sit around and not know what's going on, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to sign this so that I know I'm good for X amount of years and I don't have to worry about the next CBA.
Yeah, I mean, nobody gets paid during a lockout or a strike, but, if there is going to be huge structural changes to the CBA, maybe some agents and players would rather lock in a high value deal before, that doesn't maybe exist in the future. I remain skeptical that there will be these huge changes, but on the other side, PCA as a player is pretty fascinating because he strikes out a lot. He chases outside the zone a lot. He improved that a little bit this spring, and so maybe they're betting on him improving that as he goes along and having a better sense of the zone. I think aging curves suggest that players do take more pitches as they get older and do develop some plate discipline. So I could see that happening. Or maybe what they're saying is with this extension, we take him to 29 or 30. We take him to the cusp of the year before this traditionally starts to become more of an issue. In your early 30s, your contact rate outside the zone really starts to plummet. Maybe this extension will just take him to 30 and they won't have to worry about what happens after that. PCA is such a good player with the elite defense, the power, the speed, and yet there is this sort of big flaw that makes him interesting. And we haven't yet heard numbers. We heard something about they offered him 60 or 70 million for a certain amount of years, and that this might double that. Jackson Merrill got 130 million. There's some similarities in the fact that both of them had their own flaws. Both are great defensive young players. They both have some question marks around their game. I don't know. Would you rather have PCA or Jackson Merrill?
If you're giving me equal terms and starting from the same point in their timelines, probably PCA, because I think Gold Glove defense in center field is a phenomenal foundation. I think we saw in the first half of last season a guy that was probably top 3 in the NL MVP race before the second half fade. I mean, he's aggressive overall. He swings as much as any qualified hitter in baseball, and that's something that can be modified slightly, I think, over time, but I think inherently it's part of what makes him a dangerous hitter, is that he takes his shots. So reining that in a little bit seems possible, and then the other part of it is how much will he improve over time against left-handed pitching, right? He's going to play against lefties because his defense is so good, but will he become less of a liability facing them as a hitter over time. Those two things will also, I think, determine like where that offensive floor goes in the years ahead.
We saw that Pete Crow-Armstrong had more catches last year affected by sunlight, by the sun, by the high sky basically, and by wind than any other player. So it's possible that he's the best defender in the sport. In fact, it's probable. So that is a good basis to start all conversations.
It's wild that they can now track those stats. How do you track those stats? Is it based on where the sun is?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you look at you can look at the orientation of the field, and you can look at how the sun goes, and you can look at what time it was, and you can guess, you can kind of sort of nail down where the sun is at a certain time. Then you can take the ball flight and say, oh, that ball went right into where the sun is, where you'd be looking right into it. So.
And we know it's extremely windy in
It
Chicago
is.
at Wrigley Field all the time too. So you factor that in. They play a ton of day games. So yeah, it's probably the most difficult center field environment you can play in, given all of those factors. And he handles it exceptionally well. So obviously good news for Cubs fans, and probably some really good news for Pete Crow-Armstrong getting some of that long-term security as well. Some other breaking news, Britt. Is there anything going on with the Tigers right now?
Well, certainly there's some baseball news, but I think aside from that, guys, there continues to be some red flags, let's call them, at Ilitch Sports Entertainment, which is the parent company of the Detroit Tigers, the Detroit Red Wings as well, some entertainment venues. I wrote Tuesday morning in The Athletic a story detailing that an employee who had been there for about 18 years did what, my previous work, the ISC has said they wanted, which was come forward with an issue. He wrote a very detailed email about Matt Coy, who was named the interim VP of marketing at Ilitch Sports and Entertainment. He also works as a consultant for a company called Cuento Marketing. And is it unusual, you might be asking, for a guy to be a VP of a consulting agent and also be VP of a team at the same time? The answer to that is yes. Is it odd that VP who works for the team is allowed to go work for other teams like the Washington Nationals and the St. Louis Cardinals and disappear for days? And the answer to that is also yes. I called many other teams. As for the guy who wrote the email, he was told that email would serve as his resignation letter. Where it gets interesting, guys, is just 2 weeks later, there were more complaints about this Matt Coy guy down at spring training, and HR launched a formal investigation. And this guy, again, is a consultant, is a freelancer, is not technically an employee of the organization. I don't know what the investigation came up with. Nobody involved in the investigation, the sources I talked to, knew, but some of the complaints were that he was verbally abusive, screaming, he put his hands on the shoulders of multiple women, and then employees were told that Matt Coy would work remotely from now on. So just a very weird situation. Employees don't feel heard. Cuento Marketing, it should be noted, and Matt Coy have a lot of ties to Ilitch Sports and Entertainment CEO Ryan Gustafson, who worked at the San Diego Padres with their co-founders, Katie Jackson, Wayne Partello, and also Matt Coy.
The HR department at Ilitch Sports, they need to watch the HR videos that we all watch. I don't know. There's a term. What was the term again? I can't. Why I keep forgetting the term. What's the term again?
For firing someone for speaking up, retaliation.
Retaliation. We watch these videos every year, and they didn't watch these videos. You can't fire someone for basically an HR complaint like that. I mean, that's pretty basic rules. And then you had some more details about how they treated this person that I would say gave thoughtful feedback. I mean, if you're running an organization, you want to hear this sort of thing. You want to know that there's problems. You don't want morale to get to the point where you're losing good people and nobody wants to work there. So instead of saying, oh, this is good feedback, they fired him basically, and then they went back to him with a deal afterwards.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is someone who had been there for 18 years. So I read the email, I have a copy of the email, a very thoughtful email with subheads and examples and copious notes about Coy having meetings and missing out on them and saying, oh, I can't talk now, even though he scheduled a meeting, saying he was in an Uber, saying he had bad Wi-Fi, saying he was with another team for the week. In one occasion, he was at an indoor kids play place and said he couldn't talk. And it was like, you scheduled the meeting. So there were some issues. It was very laid out. As you said, They meet with him a week later and they say that's your resignation. Then they go back to him and they say, we would like to offer you a severance package, 2 weeks pay. he had been there for 18 years. This was a detail that was not in the story, but I have the documentation. I've seen the severance package offer, and he said, no, I'm not signing that because that included a kind of like an NDA, a non-disparage clause where he couldn't talk negatively about the organization. So they went back to him and they said, all right, we'll give you 4 weeks. And he's like, still not enough. I've been there for 18 years and I would like to be able to talk about this experience because, again, he feels like it was wrong. And, there's so much stuff in these kinds of stories, guys, that can't get reported. There's so many more details that come to this, but it's troubling in the wake of what I wrote last September, where 8 men were accused of kind of, abuse, really, and the misconduct and their treatment towards women. And ISC said, we're going to do better. We've gotten rid of some of these people. For somebody to write this email, somebody who grew up a Tigers fan, loved his job, to say, like, we need to make these changes for this team. This is what I'm seeing. And to be treated like that, I think, is disheartening. And then just weeks later, more complaints and investigation. And again, this guy was told he can work remotely in the consultant/VP role that he has. Just a lot of murkiness here, a lot of gray area.
I think one of the problems here might be that the people investigating themselves and investigating the rot, there might be some rot there too, because you're uncovering here malfeasance by the HR department, and the HR department is supposed to be the one that's going to investigate. I mean, they don't seem like they're acting in good faith, and that they're doing best practices. So that might be part of the problem in that organization.
I think if two stains collide, it just makes one bigger stain. So that's kind of how it works. Well, great reporting, Britt. Not exactly the story Tigers fans were expecting this time of year, but
hey, there was a competing good story, though, right?
There was a good story.
Weird timing on that one.
Yeah.
Very odd that they would also release on Tuesday that Kevin McGonigle is going to be on the opening day roster. So, hey, congrats to Kevin McGonigle. We're excited about him as the top prospect or one of the top prospects in baseball, depending on which list that you look at. And obviously from a fantasy perspective, we're excited about that as well. We'll talk about the Tigers in a few minutes when we get to the AL Central breakdown. But I think this was kind of written on the wall as a possibility that unless he had a horrible spring, was more likely than not, even though he's moved relatively fast through their system. That's kind of been the one thing that you could say would hold him back is they could have justified sending him to AAA. He's never played there. He's played 46 games at AA. So I think we've talked about this with Cody Stavenhagen on a couple of occasions, and I think his apprehension about saying it was definitely going to happen coming off of spring training comes from that limited exposure to upper levels of minor league pitching. But 411 OBP, a couple of homers, a couple of steals this spring was enough to convince the Tigers that he's ready.
Yeah, and I also think, too, if you're not going to spend in free agency, and we haven't seen them do that in a big way under Scott Harris, you got to rely on your young guys, and you got to be maybe a little aggressive in promoting them. We've seen that with the Orioles. We've seen that with some other teams. And so I think that that's probably a little bit of a case here, too, is he fills a need. We didn't fill this need. If they had filled it with a stopgap free agent, yeah, it would have kept him to get more seasoning. But now you're going to roll the dice and see what he can do. The Tigers are favored to win this division. A win in April is just as important as wins in September. So I think this is a good move for them, baseball-wise. Like, if they can jump out, get out to a lead in that division, this is their last year of scoop. Like, this is the year to go for it if you're the Detroit Tigers. So I like this move.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that, they weren't maybe able to take the money and go out into free agency and add a Fromber and a big bat on that level. So instead, you put Fromber on there and you take advantage of Skubal's last year and you push McGonigle in. I think it also, from a team constructs point of view, we don't know exactly where he's going to play, but it seems pretty obvious that he's going to be the shortstop. And I laid out earlier that, with Baez, you have defense. With McKinstry, you have offense. But with McGonigle, you might actually have a shortstop that gives you defense and offense. And Baez and McKinstry are better served as utility players all around the infield. And you can still platoon at short if you want to make it easier on McGonigle. In terms of what he's going to do, I do think that he's going to be a good player. But I think, people might look at his Arizona power numbers and just write those in because they look like his minor league numbers, and I think they'll give him more power than maybe he'll show in his first year. I mean, first of all, it's his first year. Second of all, his barrel and max EV numbers are not necessarily on par with like a 250 ISO or like a 500 slugging. I don't think he's a 25 homer hitter in his first year. And then lastly, he's doing this in Arizona. When he gets to Tiger Stadium, Tiger Stadium is the 23rd best place for a hitter to hit doubles, a lefty hitter to hit doubles, and it's the 15th best place for a lefty to hit homers. So it's going to be a tougher place for him to hit than Arizona, and he's going to face tougher competition. So I think he'll do something where he hits 250, hits 15 homers, and steals 10 bases or something like that. Still going to be the best option for them at shortstop, and kudos to them for making what I think is the correct decision. He is going to be one of the main competitors for the Rookie of the Year, and that would give them some benefits as well in the CBA.
Yeah, one more potential lift to that lineup. I think the challenging thing about the way the Tigers built that roster was, as you looked at position players in free agency, unless you were going to the very top of the board, it's hard to find the position where you can get the clearest upgrade. The way that roster's built, a lot of two-war type players, and those are the kinds of guys that you get in the mid-range in free agency. So at least by going out and getting Fromber, bolstering that rotation, and only going 3 years, even though it's a big AAV, it's $115 million, they did at least use their resources in a way that was kind of logical to the core they had in place without blocking McGonigle, without blocking Max Clark. They've got a great farm system, so they've got more help coming in the next year or so as well. So all in all, I think they put together a pretty good push behind Tarek Skubal here in 2026. Coming up, we're going to break down the AL East, a division that once again projects to be extremely tight, top to bottom. Stay tuned. All right, let's get into our AL East breakdown. The projections here from Baseball Prospectus are very tight, as we've come to expect. At the top, you have the Blue Jays projected for 88.1 wins, just a whisker above the Yankees at an even 88, Orioles at 83.6, Red Sox at 83.3, and the Rays at 82.4. But you can look at those projections and say all 5 teams are actually contenders. They're all close enough where you could make a case for them. We really were picking up right where we left off last season, where we had a wire-to-wire battle between the Jays and the Yankees for the division, but I think they're going to catch more pressure from all of the other teams in this group this year. Even though the Rays don't spend like the other teams in the group, they do seem to be a notch better than they were last year, and we saw the Orioles go out and make pretty big splashes via free agency and via trade to shore up that entire roster.
I know the NL West is a tough division too, but you look at this and like you said, top to bottom, there could just be a handful of games between first and last, and it wouldn't surprise me. I think for the Orioles, first off, I think that the Blue Jays are going to win this division. I know the Yankees are favored in lots of spots. A lot of that's going to hinge, in my opinion, on Garrett Cole and his comeback from Tommy John. I think Toronto's bullpen is a little bit of an Achilles heel and is their concern, but they are running back a group that went to the World Series. You look at how the culture they've created, the players that they've had come through there, the fact that guys want to stay there, guys want to re-sign there, and an ownership group that's willing to spend. I think Toronto, to me, is going to continue to be the team to beat. But the Orioles are so interesting because this is it now. You fired Brandon Hyde. It's all on Mike Elias now, and he knows that. It's all on the front office. And so you saw them depart from their philosophy of doing it all in-house, of believing that they had enough and only doing 1 or 2 free agents here for a 1-year deal. No, they went out and they spent big. Pete Alonso, not something that they do at all. Very atypical. But it just shows that there's an urgency now because Orioles fans were told, wait, we're going to get good. They get good. They win the AL East. They still haven't won a playoff game, guys, since 2014. That's a really long time. So there's a lot of pressure on them that even if they're not leading the division, you're going to see them, I think, be aggressive in July. You're going to see this whole division kind of jockeying all year. It's going to, I think of the AL East as a horse race, right? Where it's this nose is in front, then this nose is in front. We're going to kind of see that all year long, I think. I continue to believe Toronto is the team to beat. If Garrett Cole comes back and looks like Garrett Cole of old, could the Yankees edge them? Like, absolutely, because we know Aaron Judge just does insane things every single year, and you can kind of pencil him in to be otherworldly. But I don't know. I was around Toronto a lot last year. They're like a sum of their parts team, the way their offense is. And I just feel like they're such a well-rounded team that puts pressure on teams. It forces them to make mistakes. They play baseball kind of, quote, the right way. And I think that shows up over a 162 game stretch. The Yankees fundamentals are constantly an issue. Is this going to be the year that they're not the problem? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. One thing that strikes me about this is when you look at this is that, Toronto's projected for 88 wins and Boston's projected for 83 wins. I mean, Tampa's projected for 82 wins. So the entire division is going to be good teams. And somebody might say, well, this can't be true. There's nobody who's going to win the AL East with 88 wins. And I think that's probably also true. I looked at historically what it's taken to win the AL East, and it's never been less than 94 wins. I mean, you have to go back to 2017 to get 93 wins. And it's, if I did an average, it's about 96 or 97 wins, really. So I think, the last 2 years, though, it's been 94 wins. And this is a tight group of really good teams. And I think that's what just makes it hard for someone, like Britt pointed out, it makes it hard for someone to kind of just really get way out in front. So there's going to be, Toronto's going to have a month, the Yankees are going to have a month, the Orioles are going to have a month, and they're each going to have a month where they seem like they suck, and all the papers are like, what happened to this team? So I think it will be tight. I think it will take 94 wins, and I think that there is going to be a loser or two in this that we can't put our minds around right now. That doesn't seem obvious. Obviously, you can just pick the Rays because they're the worst, but one of these top four teams, we have a Discord bold projection from SLGS Reds that the AL East sends four teams to the playoffs. And I get it. That could totally happen. These are, really good teams. And Boston being projected for 83 wins doesn't even make sense to me. I think they're a much better team than that. On the other hand, I think a little bit back to my NL East prediction, which is just like one of these teams is going to collapse. One of these teams it's not going to work out for, and they're going to be where the winning team gets the extra 6 or 7 wins and gets to 95, 96 wins. Now, it could be just the Rays are way worse than we expect, and they are, a 85 loss team or a 90 loss team. That could filter up and give enough wins for all four to make it. But I do think that when you think about these teams, there are teams that, like New York, it could not work. It could not work. Jazz gets hurt. He gets hurt all the time. And that maybe like Ryan McMahon and Jazz is not good enough for, defensively. Volpe doesn't come back right away, and Caballero's not the great defender. So we spend the first month of the year talking about how bad the Yankees defense is and how did this happen again, Grisham was not a good defender in center last year, and if that was not a one-year blip and he's actually not good in center anymore, oh gosh, now Grisham's a backup corner outfielder. We got to put Bellinger in center, and oh man, Bellinger's not actually the defender he was 3 years ago. I'm just trying to work the narrative that how one of these teams, and I'm not trying to pick on the Yankees either. Baltimore, you like the new pitchers. Well, yeah. Boz gives up 2 homers per 9, and he's better, but he's not that great. And Rogers regresses, and
Bradish doesn't come back.
And
I think their season hinges on Bradish.
Bradish pulls a hammy or something, and you're just like, oh. And Jackson Holiday doesn't have any power when he comes back with the hamate issue. And I mean, I'm just saying that I think one of these four will have a bad season. We'll just have a bad season. We'll end up very close to 500, and we don't know which one it's going to be. And so that's why I do think it's a good bold prediction, because it is bold, and it's not necessarily supported by the projections either. The Tigers or the Rangers or the Astros are going to push one of these teams out by projections alone. But I also just think in terms of this, how the AL East goes, there's always one team that captures the headlines in a bad way, where there's things are falling apart, and we have to spend a lot of time and energy writing about what went wrong in fill in the blank.
Yeah. To be fair, we just went on a huge soliloquy about all these other teams. I feel like we barely mentioned the Red Sox. Roman Anthony, if the WBC is an appetizer, Roman Anthony could have an insane year. Garrett Crochet has that new splitter that could be nasty. Like they could overtake those teams we talked about and maybe finish, maybe not win the division, but they could be a wild card team. Wouldn't surprise me at all either. Like the way Roman Anthony played, he played like an absolute star. Nobody else on the roster has that kind of ceiling. Very few players in the game have the kind of ceiling that Roman Anthony does. And he looks like he's in midseason form already.
I think Boston has the arrows. When we talk about arrows sometimes, like the up arrow, the down arrow. Like in terms of where they're projected, I think most of the players actually have an up arrow. They've revamped this roster to the point that it's mostly young players on offense, right? So, when I was looking at their projections, for the team, they have 8 guys who are projected to be above league average by oopsie. The 9th and 10th players are Marcelo Meyer and Sedan Rafaela. And the 11th player is Caleb Durbin. So those are 3 players that if the arrow is wrong, it's going to be that they're better than projections because they're young. They could still leap forward. And if any one of those players leaps forward, now you have an entire lineup of above league average players with some really excellent ones. Roman Anthony that, could win an MVP in his career. And you've done so much work on the pitching side that you have the best or second best starting rotation in baseball, and your bullpen's not even a problem. It's a decent one. I wouldn't say it's one of the very best, but it's a decent bullpen. So yeah, the Red Sox, I think, have an up arrow next to their name.
They, I think, for the reasons you mentioned, kind of stand out to me as the one that I believe in right now, because I feel like the pressure's a little bit lower on them relative. I mean, there's always pressure in Boston, but relative to the Jays being one game away from winning the World Series, relative to the Yankees going through a long drought for that franchise.
And just bringing everybody back.
And just bringing everybody back and then relying on the return of Cole and the arrival of Ryan Weathers via trade, pushing them over the top. And then whatever they do at the deadline, they'll be active at the deadline. I'm sure they'll get their upgrades then too. Like, it's a risky thing that we're going to be talking a lot about. If they fall flat, if they somehow miss the playoffs, then it's going to be unbelievable in the Bronx. I don't think that's going to happen. But when I was starting to look at the teams that I actually want to pick for division winners, the Red Sox jumped off the page because I like their starting pitching depth. The Yankees have great pitching depth once everyone gets healthy. I think the Red Sox pretty much have it right now, right? Crochet being the ace up top, the trade for Sonny Gray. They signed Ranger Suarez. I don't love it from a long-term perspective, but it absolutely makes them better in the short term. Bayo being a 4, that'll work. Connolly early as the 5 with Oviedo in the pen, I think makes their bullpen better. And they got Peyton Tolley waiting in the wings to jump in the back of that rotation. They're going to have Patrick Sandoval healthy as a back-end option soon. So I think the bullpen's good. The rotation is good with good depth. And the lineup has a lot of guys that can hit. Even if you don't necessarily have one overwhelming source of power, if Roman Anthony's a year or two away from being a 30-plus homer guy, they got a bunch of guys that are going to hit 20. They play good defense at key positions. So yeah, I'm with you on the up arrow on the Red Sox. They're the one that I'm circling as my actual pick to come away as the division champs this year.
Toronto did a good job this offseason, I think, putting some interesting pieces around. I like Kazumo Okamoto a lot. I love that he makes contact, he makes powerful contact, and has a defensive home. I've always liked Jesus Sanchez. That was an easy little deal for them to just, make their outfit a little better. But I do think that there are some guys that, like George Springer's projected to be about 20% better than league average, and that's totally plausible. That's a lot less than he did last year, and there's also a fair amount of collapse percentage, I think, in a player of his age. And they had a fair amount of role players last year play to the upper ends. I'm thinking of somebody like a Nathan Lucas. Maybe they'll just find those new role players again and they'll play up. But things have to go pretty well to get all the way to the World Series, I think. And it doesn't mean that everything's going to go well the same way again for the Blue Jays this year. I guess that's my general vibe, is that it's really hard to keep going there.
Second best WAR projection in the entire league, though, from Fangraphs, behind only the Dodgers.
Yeah, give me Toronto. Sorry, I think they're going to win.
Did you actually also jump on board with the Red Sox in there too? You're pretty high on the praise.
Yeah, what'd you pick?
I actually I trolled you guys a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if I'll just.
You went post Eno, like just tell us how bad the Yankees could be, and you're gonna pick the Yankees?
No,
Yeah, right.
I picked the Orioles.
The Orioles.
Ooh,
Okay.
The reason I
After you crushed the Orioles.
Yeah, I did a little bit. That was a hypothetical experiment. What I'm doing with picking the Orioles is just that they have such a good lineup. They have, they have 13 players projected to be not only above league average, but more than 7% above league average. So that goes down to Dylan Beavers. That goes down to minor leaguers, man. Like John Quincy Noel is in the top 13 here. So, I love the Taylor Ward acquisition, the Pete Alonso acquisition. Just because you have a strength doesn't mean you can't make it stronger. I think Colton Cowser's a breakout pick this year. I mean, he already had a 3.8 win season on his register. He just has to actually just get back to that. I think Kobe Mayo is actually the breakout pick this year on that offense. And it's just a great offense. And I think they did just enough on the pitching end that I can give them the division. I think Bradish will have a good season. I like Shane Baz, and then their traditional sort of Chris Bassett is their 1-12. He's a little bit more 1-18, but he's their kind of veteran that they fill out the rotation with, and Eflin too. And Ryan Helsley, I think, is going to be like a top 5 closer in the league this year. So I think they did a lot of work on the pitching side that maybe goes unappreciated.
Yeah, it's good depth. I think Shane Baz not pitching in a minor league park will get the home run rate under control. It might still be above average for a starter, but still believe in the potential for him. And I'm with you on Bradish. I think Bradish is a true frontline guy, and that goes a really long way. So as long as he stays healthy, that's huge for them as they try and get back into the playoffs. The Rays are sort of the other team in this conversation. There is some news on the Rays that will fold in here. We just learned this morning that Ryan Pepiot was placed on the 15-day IL with right hip inflammation. It's going to give Joe Boyle an opportunity to make a few starts in that rotation. Per Mark Tompkin, Nick Martinez also a little banged up, so he got moved back a couple of days. So Joe Boyle is going to start the second game of the season for the Rays. What is it really going to take for the Rays to actually hang around in this division, or at least hang around for a playoff berth? Because by projection, that is the built-in expectation. They're going to be in contention at least for a wild card throughout this season. I mean, one thing is Junior Caminero continuing to be an anchor in the heart of the order. That's huge for them. But then I think you have to look at some of the mixing and matching they do. Yanni Diaz is an underrated hitter, so he's got to keep doing what he does. Of the platoons, of the other young players, who takes the step forward in that lineup? We know they can build a great bullpen. They always find a way to make the pitching work. Shane McClanahan's healthy right now. That goes a really long way towards changing how this team looks every fifth day too. But where does it come from in the position player group this year?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, does Chandler Simpson take a step forward? Does he get enough at bats to take a step forward? The thing about the Rays that I've learned is there's always guys you've never heard of who come up and end up like contributing to the team, right? That's the Rays way. So you almost don't even look at the roster who breaks camp. You should probably look at AAA Durham and be like, all right, which one of these guys is going to come up that we've never heard of? And all of a sudden be like in the Rookie of the Year race or something. And I'm glad you mentioned Junior Caminero because he's a guy who can vie for the AL MVP, I think, this year. Another guy who, if the WBC, again, like Roman Anthony, like met the moment in the WBC, and I think people that don't really pay attention to the Rays don't realize how good he is. Baseball fans, I think in general, if you're playing fantasy and you're paying attention, you know how good he is, you know the power that's there. But if McClanahan can stay healthy, if Caminero can have kind of a season that we think he's capable of having, and the Rays can get these random contributions like they do, because Eric Neander is so good at finding these undervalued guys. We've heard about the Rays culture. I mean, they're excellent at working the platoons and just finding ways to maximize guys who were maybe thrown away by other organizations. I can see the Rays sneaking in as a wild card. The Rays could be the second wild card. Like, is 4 teams too crazy? Like the guy said in the discourse, maybe, but 3? Would 3 surprise anybody? If it's like the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, and the Rays? I mean, that'd be wild. I mean, the Orioles and the Yankees don't make it in, but...
The 3 you picked would be wild, yes.
Yes. They continuously surprise. And I think McClanahan and Caminero on the hitting and on the pitching side are absolute keys. They have to stay healthy. They have to be productive if everything else is going to fall into place. The Rays' margin for error because of that payroll and how they operate so much thinner than every other team in that division. Everything has to go right.
Yeah, this might not surprise our listeners, but I'm not going to pick the Rays to make the playoffs, and I think they're going to be actually worse than their projections. And I think it's because of the offense. I think there's just too much work to be done on this offense. They have 3 hitters that are projected to be above league average. And that's, I mean, yes, you can mix and match your way to average on some other spots, but that's 3, and you got 9 in the lineup every night. If it does work out, Carson Williams takes a major leap. I think Carson Williams, and what I don't like about that projection is that he was actually headed to the minor leagues until there was an injury and he came back. So the team already decided you're headed to the minor leagues, and then, oh, wait, no, we were really excited about you. Opening day shortstop, super excited. And I mean, they've got some guys like Ben Williamson and Jacob Melton who are, I think, Britt's, minor leaguers in waiting that could break out. Both of them have interesting plate skills, defensive abilities. Neither of them, I think, is like a real standout offensively. And then everybody knows how I feel about Chandler Simpson. So, it's just,
Not good.
not really. And then Gavin Lux is hurt, and he's their 5th best hitter by projections. So, I just don't think they're in a great place to start the season. And I think if they have 4 guys that are above league average or 5 guys that are above league average, that'll be a victory for them. But it won't be enough to get them to the postseason.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of the lineup as well, and I'm very surprised that Jacob Melton didn't make the opening day roster. I think he's the sleeper in waiting there. I don't know how long I can hold him on my rosters, though, if they're going to keep him down in the minors for more than a couple of weeks to begin the season. We are going to take a quick break, and then it's on to the AFC South of Major League Baseball, the AL Central. Welcome back. It's time for our AL Central breakdown. Look, I have a soft spot in my heart for both Central divisions. I call the NL Central America's division. I like Central Division baseball. I've been thinking about this for at least a month now. I still can't believe, even by a small margin, that the Royals are projected ahead of the Tigers by Potere. It's only 1 win, 85 wins for the Royals, 84 for the Tigers. There's a gap before you get to the Twins at 78. Cleveland down at 75. White Sox still rebuilding, down at 69. Can either of you sell me on the Royals as a true favorite in this division? And I asked this question to someone that sees Bobby Witt Jr. as a potential MVP candidate, believes in the big step we saw from Maikel Garcia, knows that Vinny Pasquantino took a step forward last year and is riding high off of his run with Team Italy, believes that Sal Perez is still at least good, and buys the argument you both made that Jack Caglianone is on the cusp of a breakout. I guess I'm wondering, is that enough to overcome the potential rotation depth issues and what I think is a very suspect bullpen?
Yeah, I think you just sold yourself. How many players did you mention?
5, but one of them has to break out, and I think that bullpen's really bad.
Well, the reason I think you can be sold on them is the division. If they're in the AL East, not a chance, right? But are the Tigers that much better than them?
Even if I was making the projections, it'd be like 3 or 4 wins favoring the Tigers.
That big, you think?
That's about what I'd expect. About a 3-game deficit. Yeah, I think the Tigers are about 3 games better than the Royals.
So much of the Tigers hinges on Tarek Skubal's arm, though, I feel like. I think it's closer than that. So I think the Tigers are going to win the division. I picked the Tigers to win the division. I think it's going to be closer than 3 or 4 games. I think it's been more in that 1 to 2 range. I think it's closer. I think Bobby Witt Jr. could be the MVP, though, this year. I think he could kind of dethrone Judge finally. And you mentioned Vinny Pasquantino. You mentioned Jack Caglianone. These are young, good players that are still getting better. Sal Perez, don't they also have that young kid Carter that's going to start to be worked into the mix?
Jensen.
Yeah,
yep.
It's going to start to be worked into the mix there too. So I feel like there are problems. The pitching is a little bit of an issue, but it's not so big that it's like, oh, the Tigers are going to run away with this thing at all. I think in the AL Central, I also think that the Guardians, for just reasons that you can never explain, always hang around. I mean, not just last year, in every season, the Guardians seem to somehow hang around. So I don't know if I would just bury the Guardians as we sit here in late March either. Would you guys? they seem to be very Tampa-esque, where there are guys who we have not heard of, who end up having these career years or end up doing just enough. I also think the job that Stephen Vogt does is incredibly underrated in mixing and matching. Now, when you talk about the Central, nobody does a better job, I think, platooning and getting the most out of these guys than AJ Hinch, who manages the Tigers. I think the one thing you could say for certainty with the Tigers is they're probably not going to get outmanaged. But there are holes with both of these teams. And they're both of these teams, especially with the Tigers, you're relying on young players. You're relying on players who, in some cases, when you watch the Tigers lineup down the stretch last year, went totally missing. There was a lot of boom or bust. That, and you saw two different Tigers teams. We saw a Tigers team that was dominant for half the year, and then we saw a Tigers team that almost missed the playoffs. So what are we going to see? What are we seeing this year? There's a lot of unknown there, and there's a lot of, you can make the numbers look really bad, or you can make the numbers look really good when it comes down to that lineup. So I don't think there's quite as big of a separation between the Royals and the Tigers. I think the Twins and the White Sox we can pencil in to 4th and 5th. I think the Guardians are going to be a solid 3rd place team and are also going to be pesky at times.
Yeah, I downloaded the Potere spreadsheet to get a better understanding of what's happening underneath the hood with those projections. And I can't say that it's that Potere thinks that this is a great offense, because it has Bobby Witt Jr., Michael Garcia, Pasquantino, and India as the only everyday players that are above league average overall.
Projections love Jonathan India.
They really do.
I know he gets on base a lot, but I'm always surprised.
So they don't have Caglione being above average?
They don't. Partially, I think, must be playing time. I'm trying to find...
Well, there's also a directional component to projections. A lot of young players are going to project a little bit lower than expectations, and sometimes it takes a couple of years to get there. You could point to Colt Keith as an example in Detroit.
They have Cags worth 0.7 wins in 453 ABs. That's not very good. And, when it comes to the pitching side, they're a little bit maybe higher than the market. They have Reagans, Bubic, Waka, Cameron, and Lugo as above average pitchers. So I think they must like the rotation there. And I think that's part of it. And then there must be a little bit of a bet against the Tigers offense. And so it's as much a bet on them as it is a bet against the Tigers.
What do you guys got on the Tigers lineup? Because you either love them or you're concerned, because I think we just saw like two polar opposites from players who are in their, second, third year. It's not like it's a bunch of rookies anymore.
Here's my read. I think you see 6 regulars that are going to be above average. Jahmai Jones is a small side platoon guy. He's also projected above average, but he doesn't play every day. Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, McGonigle, Gleyber Torres, Spencer Torkelson, and Colt Keith, right? It's a good top half. Within that group, 2 of their most dangerous power hitters are Green and Torkelson, and those 2 guys have the most swing and miss of the bunch. So they're a little bit feast or famine, even though they're very good offensive players that you like. You're generally happy. I mean, Green could be a star, could take a step forward, could actually lower the K rate. Torkelson, to me, is a little more of what you see is what you get. I think the key here is that both Torres and Kevin McGonigle should control the zone really well. The idea of Kevin McGonigle is that he will help bring down that swing and miss, especially if he's in a prominent spot in that lineup. So I do think what you're talking about in the second half last year was very real, but I think there's a couple of small directional indicators that might actually nudge them back in the right direction. Maybe they'll be a little closer to league average in terms of team K rate. And Colt Keith kind of quietly took a small step forward last year. If he does that again, that's nice incremental improvement on the margins too. I think Dylan Dingler behind the plate is a little underprojected. I think projections are pulling down Zach McKinstry, who was really good last year, so that's fine. I'm not expecting a repeat there. I think it's a deep enough lineup that because of the platoons, we'll find a way. I think they'll strike out just a bit less and be a little more consistent day to day this year.
Yeah, I think I discovered partially why Potere, has the Tigers down below the Royals. They have Riley Green as being 2% better than league average this year with the stick.
Ooh, wow, that's a big gap compared to other projections.
It really is. They have Kerry Carpenter only 6% better than league average with the stick. Colt Keith 4%, Gleyber Torres 13%, and those are the only above average hitters on the team. So they think that this is not a good offensive team, basically. And I can get that, but I think I also hear what you're saying, Derek, in that there's some mix and match here too. There's some way these skills fit together. There's some guys who control the zone. There's free swingers who hit hard. There's contact guys. There's walk guys. I mean, to have Baez in this lineup some days might really work. To have just a free swinger, batting ninth and hitting a random homer. So. I think that also the guys who are quote unquote bad are not that bad. So there's a lot of sort of 90, 95 WRC plus, DRC plus type players on this team. So those are the types of guys, if you put them in against the right-handedness, can really work. So they do what the Tigers do, which is platoon and mix and match and get the most out of this. And I don't, as much as I like the Royals, and I've put some bold predictions in. I had a bold prediction that their offense would be top 10. That's a bold prediction. My more sane prediction is the Tigers win this division.
I think when you look at the Guardians, their lineup, by some projections, has 4 average or better hitters. Obviously, Jose Ramirez, Kyle Manzardo, Steven Kwan, and then Rhys Hoskins. You also have the arrival of Chase DeLauder. You could have someone like Bo Naylor take a step. You could mix and match at a spot. Maybe David Fry being healthy helps them against lefties. But it's still one notch below how the Royals and Tigers are built right now. So you would need multiple surprises, I think, for Cleveland's offense to catch up. The question's going to come down to how good their pitching is. And if they get more mileage out of Tanner Bybee this year, if you get steps forward from Gavin Williams or Joey Cantillo or Parker Messick, the bullpen's still really good, even without Clase. I'm not really worried about that. I think it's still a well above average relief unit. But the quality of the rotation, is it a lot of mid-rotation guys, or does someone pop and have an ace-type season there? Like, that could be the area where Cleveland makes up a little bit of ground on the pack.
Ciccone looked great this spring and has a new pitching mix, and I think he could jump in to be their number 3. And then Messick and Cantillo, like, just if they're just a little bit on the right side of their projections, I think it could be. I actually think this will be an above-average rotation, which is a bit of a hot take, but that lineup, man, even with DeLauder doing things and Manzardo, I just don't see it being a top 20 lineup even.
Derek, so when I said the Tigers over the Royals, is that what you have, or do you have something?
Yeah, I'm
different?
Tigers.
So
I'm
all
Tigers
of us agree.
AL Central. Yeah. I think the Royals are good. I'm it's a little bit like my hesitation with the Pirates on the NL side. I think they're good. I think they're close. I think it could happen. If I'm circling the teams I think I'm going to see in the postseason, I think they're on the outside looking in right now, even though they project as a playoff team by multiple systems. The other 2 teams in the division right now, the Twins, it just feels like it's 78 wins with the down arrow. They're caught between 2 timelines. There's some interesting pitchers. There are young position players that could come up and exceed expectations. I wonder if they're going to force the issue, promote more guys, try to win now, and just see if they can hang around. Like, that would be the kind of the most interesting scenario for them if they are prospect heavy, if we see Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez and some of the guys that have been making their way through that system. The White Sox, I think it's just the rebuild continues, maybe a step forward from last year, but I'd be stunned if we're talking about this team in July as being within a few games of the last wild card. That'd be arriving well ahead of schedule for me.
Yeah. There's a group of pitchers they're kind of waiting on in the minor leagues that I think were at AA last year, the Birmingham rotation. So you're kind of just tracking, in my mind, you're tracking their progress and you're kind of treading water with the big league club, right? Because you're trying to have everything converge at the same time as best you can. So I would agree with you. The Twins is unfortunate. It feels like all of the ownership uncertainty contributed to the, were we going to go for it? Are we not going to go for it? Hey, let's part ways with Derek Falvey. Like, just a lot of up and down and zigging and zagging. And if you're listening to this and you're a Twins fan, like, I feel you. I am sorry for you that you have to endure this and go through this because you don't deserve it. You don't deserve it.
It's just that hard sell at the trade deadline last year makes so little sense based on what they're trying to do right now. That's all. That's the frustrating part.
Yeah, when I look at that Twins rotation is where I'm really worried because, they're asking for Taj Bradley to do something he's never done. Bailey Ober, the velo has never been good and it's been worse. I'm wondering if he's hurt. I mean, it doesn't look good. Simeon Woods Richardson, the peripherals have always said that he's over his skis a little bit. They sent Zebby Matthews down partially because Mick Abel was was better, but also Zebby didn't look as great as they might have expected in the spring. And so, you could easily see this heading towards Joe Ryan being traded at the trade deadline, and this starting rotation having an ERA over 4.5, close to 5. And I think that would just undo any good that could happen on the offensive side, as much as I like some of their offensive pieces. I mean, if Royce Lewis is healthy, or, if some of their young guys take a step forward, I mean, I think Matt Wallner could hit 30 homers this year. Luke Keeschel could steal 30 bases and have like a 300 average. There are good pieces on this offense, and they're being squandered a little bit, I think, by the current state of pitching.
Yeah, and I think as far as the bullpen goes, it's not good enough to cover the flaws of that rotation. It's probably a below average unit. Usually it's a strength for the Twins, so unless they find a few guys that we're not really seeing in the projections right now, I think that's going to be a sore spot for them as well. At least in terms of the White Sox rebuild, I'll give them another thumbs up for being more watchable this year. Signing Murakami is at least interesting. Kyle Teel looks like a good catcher behind the plate. Vargas got a little better last year. They're going to sift through a few other players as secondary guys. Colson Montgomery is someone that I might have underrated upon arrival. He was really hurt coming through their minor league system. Got to a lot of power last year and played really good defense at short, as we talked about with Jed a week or so ago. Non-switch hitter Luis Angel Acuna is probably going to get some run. I think he's a little more of an exciting player than Eno does. I think you had a reason you liked Acuna though recently, right? Did he pick up a little bat speed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guesstimating from what we can see in the spring, because for some reason this year bat speed is not coming through in the spring, but he has hit a ball harder this spring than he has in a while, and the hard hit rate is up. And I think just generally, this is a man that could be given a full shot at a full year and steal 25, 30 bags, which is why he's on my main event team. I don't know what the number of homers is. It could be 7, it could be 12, it could be 15. If it's closer to 15, then he is an above average everyday player at center field. That's the hope for them. I just wanted to give a little Munetaka Murakami update. There is some good news. He has a 25% strikeout rate this spring. However, there is some bad news. He has a 22% swinging strike rate, and nobody that qualified for the ERA title, nobody that qualified for the batting title last year had higher than a 17% swinging strike rate. So it would be the worst, and that was Brandon Lau. He did hit 256 with a lot of homers. So, that's, I guess, still a possibility. But the other people that were actually near Murakami in terms of swinging strike rate were Kyron Paris, Gabriel Arias, Luke Raley, and Zach Geloff.
Is that good?
No. The collective batting average there is around 180. So.
All right. So, the state of the White Sox, waiting on that pitching, as Britt said, too. It's coming. Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, Tanner McDougal, all relatively close. I think Christian Apor a little further behind, but also an impact pitcher on the position player side. Braden Montgomery, maybe by the end of the season, a late August call-up potentially if things go well for him in the upper levels of the minor leagues. So reasons to tune in, I think, this summer if you are a White Sox fan and you were a little appalled by what they put on the field for most of last season. One more division breakdown to get to if my voice makes it for another 12 or 15 minutes. It's a coin flip at this point, I think. The Mariners are projected to win the AL West by almost 10 games. 94.1 is the projection from Pacoda. 84.9 on the Rangers, 84.6 on the Astros. A cliff before you get to the A's at 76.2, and yet another cliff before you get to the Angels at 65.3. Be anything you want to be in life except for Artie Moreno's Angels.
You're going to get us in trouble with Angels fans again.
I'm not trying.
Angels fans know.
I have no beef with Angels fans. Just don't do anything that Artie has done there. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's how not to run a big league organization by Artie Moreno.
Yeah.
And you just look at the whole history since he's been there.
I hate always saying the projections are right, but in the case of the AL West, I think the projections are right. Because these are educated guesses, right? These are computers, these are models, these are people, and these are real human beings playing the game. We don't know how it's going to go. I have a hard time not penciling the Seattle Mariners. A lot of things have to go wrong. The Seattle Mariners aren't winning the AL West, in my opinion. The team that could challenge them is probably the Rangers, because the Rangers have some interesting stuff, like the Mackenzie Gore trade, the addition of Brandon Nimmo. Like, how is all of this going to work out? I think Mackenzie Gore is going to benefit from the change of scenery. I think he could emerge as a really good frontline starter. But it feels like it's been a long time since the Rangers won the World Series, and it's been 3 years. Isn't that wild, guys? Because the drop off was so quick, kind of like the 2019 Nats that I covered. Like, the drop off was so quick that you forget that they were good and they won the World Series only 3 years ago. There is a world where they are pesky and then they become a playoff team. But I think for Seattle, they're kind of like Toronto. They tasted a little bit of October success and they went out and they were like, how do we replicate this, right? Bringing Naylor back, huge, 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 huge. I was around that team a lot in October. And what he brings to that clubhouse, huge. Do I think Cal Raleigh's going to have the year he had? No, that was a historic year. But he's still going to be a very good catcher. He's still going to be a really impressive bat in the middle of their lineup. You got Julio Rodriguez. You've got a pitching staff that I think could easily be top 5 in MLB when all is said and done. I don't think there are that many flaws, and we can sit here and we can nitpick, but 10 games is a huge, huge lead. And I just think that people are going to be chasing and looking up at them the whole year.
Yeah, I think that there might be a perceived risk here that might not be as big as people think. And so when I say that, what I mean is maybe people are wondering about starting pitching depth. And maybe people are wondering about lineup depth. And I have 2 names that I think are going to be really important for them this year that maybe we haven't talked about enough. One is Colt Emerson. I know he went down and he didn't necessarily have the best spring, in terms of certain results, but it was not bad. And he made contact. He took walks. He hit for power. He seems pretty much ready to go. And they played him at third. He plays shortstop. So if Crawford's shoulder is aching or if there's any, sort of disastrous work from Crawford at short, Emerson is right there and he can play third and Donovan can play second. So if Young doesn't work out, he's one-man depth for this team on the offensive side. And he's right there at the cusp and he's exciting. And I think he'll be in the big leagues for 4 months out of 6 at least. The other one that we haven't talked about much is Emerson Hancock. Now with Bryce Miller's on the mend a little bit, feeling a little bit better, maybe he'll make, I don't think he'll make the opening day roster. So I think Hancock is going to make this roster. But Hancock is an entirely new pitcher this spring. It's actually pretty exciting. He's come to camp with a new cutter and a new changeup that are entirely different than they were in the past. And this is so important because he had an okay sinker and a pretty good sweeper. Adding the cutter and change gives us something against right-handers. He has struck out 33% of the batters he's seen this spring and walked 1.6% of the batters he's seen this spring. So, Emerson Hancock looks ready to go, and he's a great new product of their pitching development, which I think has been pretty excellent if you look at their past wins. So just having him as a 6, Cooper Criswell as a 7, they actually have pretty good pitching depth. So this year they can survive if somebody goes down, and they have really excellent top 3 in Wu, Kirby, and Gilbert. So, this looks like a team ready to, go all the way, really. I think if I had a bold prediction for overall winner, it would be the Mariners.
I feel like you're spoiling something for us, but they're really well built right now. I think it's hard to pick against them. That projection gap reflects it accordingly. I think, to your guys' point, the thing that jumps off the page to me is that Cal Raleigh doesn't have to be the guy he was last year again, and they'll still be okay offensively. Julio could take yet another step forward. You could get more from someone like Emerson. The supporting cast is better than it's been in a long time. I think that bodes really well for them. The bullpen's still great, too, behind that rotation. I'm glad you called out Hancock. I actually had to sneak him onto a roster last night because that spring was unbelievable. And the injuries they've dealt with in that rotation over the last couple of years are something we talked about. They're going to need their 6th and 7th starter. Most teams do. I think it's built in as an assumption in Seattle because of the arm injuries they've had to shut guys down with at various points. And we know they'll be aggressive at the deadline, too. So even if that gap ends up being a little smaller than expected, I think they're still going to come out on top in the AL West when the dust clears. Between the Rangers and the Astros, I was kind of thinking about it this way. Do you think the Rangers are more likely to exceed expectations with their lineup or with their pitching staff? because they're about 40 runs behind Seattle, both in terms of what they're projected to score by PECOTA and by what they're projected to allow. And I'm just curious, like, which part of their roster you think is more likely to overperform or exceed the projections? Because for me, it's the lineup. I think it's the lineup. I'm having a hard time selling myself on the Rangers bullpen in particular for the second year in a row.
Yeah.
But I can see the young bats. Like, I believe in Carter. I think Wyatt Langford's already shown us that he's really good. I think they can mix and match at a couple of spots. And I think Brandon Nimmo is underrated. All that stuff's kind of reflected in the projection already. But I think some of the younger bats they're relying on could be like a thing that they have that helps them bridge the gap compared to the other top teams in the AL.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Smith is one of my favorite bats in the league that's, my attention given to him is much greater than his talent.
It is extremely high. Yes, you've given him a lot of attention.
I just think that I love the fact that he controls his zone. He's going to put the ball in play, and he runs well, and he can play anywhere. I think that's a great piece of glue for a team that might need him in certain places. You never know if Jake Burker's going to be healthy this year. Brandon Nimmo's knees have been iffy, and Evan Carter himself has had some back issues. So. I think when you get down to their 8th and 9th best hitters being Danny Jansen and Josh Young, like, that's pretty interesting because Young could be a little bit better than he's been in the past. He hasn't really put together the season that we thought he could. I don't know that they have, with Walcott's injury, I don't know that they have a top prospect that I'm circling in the same way as Colt Emerson that's going to join this crew and make them better. But I do think that they have a lot of veterans that could have better seasons than they had last year. And then Evan Carter, it's really about young major leaguers in Carter, Langford, and Smith and maybe even Young taking a step forward.
Well, and they took a shot kind of like the Orioles did by trading for Mackenzie Gore. I think that's kind of analogous to the Shane Baz trade too. So there's a little bit more upside in that rotation. Jack Leiter, as we talked about in the team preview, was a little bit better than expected last year. So they have a little more quality behind Jacob deGrom and Nathan Eovaldi than we would have expected a year or two ago as well. I think that bodes well for their chances of maybe hiding some of their relievers. If they lack depth initially and have a good A bullpen, that might be good enough until they get some reinforcements at the deadline. Houston, we've talked about it, I think, for 3 years now. We keep wondering when the other shoe is going to drop, when they're going to fall off. Projections say it could be this year. And look, I'm still kind of optimistic about them. I think they've got one more run in them. They project to be kind of fringy for the postseason, right in the mix. I don't think they win the division, but I kind of think the Astros find their way into the playoffs again this year.
Yeah, it's not crazy.
I'm a little worried about their back end their rotation. I'm worried. I mean, right now, Christian Javier has like a 4.90 ERA projection by Oopsie, and Lance McCullers doesn't have a good projection, and Ryan Weiss, I don't know if that was a great signing. Arrighetti is still interesting, but he has a real sort of command issue. So that's their pitching depth. That's 3 through 7 or 3 through 6 on their roster, 3 through 7, and or 4 through 7. Burrows should actually be their 3, I think. So that's their pitching depth. And I just went through talking about how I like the Mariners pitching depth. I don't know that I like the Astros pitching depth as much. One of those guys at the top goes down, and I think it gets a lot worse in Houston.
You could say that about Yordan Alvarez too, right? So much of their offense feels like it hinges on his health as well. And Jose Altuve is also a big part of their offense. And obviously his best years have already come and gone. So I don't, but you can't pick against them because they're just like pesky. They're kind of like what I said with Cleveland, right? Nobody ever says, oh, they're going to run away with the division. And then they're always kind of there at the end. So I wouldn't want to be in that division and to have Houston within a couple games as you head into September. I wouldn't. They have the experience. They've been there before, a lot of those guys, and they just have that certain it factor a little bit. Like, their window has been so much longer than anybody dreamed it was going to be. Every year for the last, it feels like 4 or 5 years, we've been like, this is the year, they're done. But as Jim Crane keeps saying, the window's going to be open as long as he's here. And are they at the, have they come off the mountain and they're on the downslope? Yes, of course. But It's been remarkable what they've been able to do, and I don't know if I would bet against them if we get down to crunch time and they're within striking distance of a playoff spot. I could see it happening. We've seen crazier things happen.
Astros are currently 11th by projected WAR from Fangraphs, which is ahead of the Padres, Rangers, Rays, Giants, Royals, and Brewers. Oh, and Pirates, too. Pirates are kind of down there a little ways.
But
so.
I think there's something to what Britt is saying, too, which is that Yordan Alvarez is their only really well-projected batter in terms of WRC plus or like on the field batting, because if he goes down, Isaac Paredes is their best projected hitter by OPSI with a 113, which is fine, but that means you go from having a stud and a bunch of fine guys around him to just being like, well, we have a bunch of fine guys, we have guys who are slightly above average, and that's not as that doesn't strike fear into an opposing pitcher. On the other hand, if everyone's fine, there have been other teams. The Cardinals did this for a long time. The no holes offense, where you're just like, hey, we're going to have 9 above average guys in the lineup every day, and they're going to break through and score enough runs. So, but I can see how, if Yordan Alvarez is healthy, they could do better than those projections. If he's not, they could do worse than these. He's that impactful as a bat in the middle of the lineup.
Yeah, I do think you're right to call out the Astros rotation as the biggest question. The depth is where things could unravel on them. The bullpen's still good. I think the lineup is still solid enough. We've talked about the A's. Bold prediction for me was that they would lead MLB in runs scored this year. That's all fine and well. If they can't keep teams from pummeling their pitching staff, they're still going to have a hard time winning enough games to be a playoff team this year. Their pitching's going to get better. They have pitching prospects that are getting close to the big leagues. Luis Severino looked good in the WBC. You can tell yourself a story that by the end of the year, that whole staff just looks a lot different. All that being said, I think they're a fun team that plays a lot of high-scoring games. I don't think they're going to sneak into the playoffs. I think Potere has playoff odds of 9.9%, right? So that seems about right to me in terms of how this team is built right now and overcoming Coors 2 being at Sutter Health Park.
Yeah, Sacramento continues to be an issue, and like I was going to say when we were talking about the Astros, guys, it's late March. You can talk me into almost anything. Like, we have no idea what we're going to see, with very few exceptions. Like, how many things do you feel like I'd bet all the money in my bank account are going to happen? There's like 2 or 3 teams you feel okay betting? Yeah, Derek says 0. There's come on, are the Rockies going to finish out of the basement? There's like 2 or 3 things that I think you would feel okay betting the house on. Other than that, though, that's what makes this sport so great, is we're going to have a team that makes us all look foolish. We're going to have multiple teams that makes us all look foolish. I don't think the A's are going to be one of them, though, because there are some real issues. Severino was one of the people who was the most vocal about the issues in Sacramento, right? And I still think that that's going to be something ballpark-wise that just hurts them.
Could they even try to acquire a veteran at the deadline and then have a veteran say no thanks and block it? That's something that's possible. I don't want to play in that park. But if you tell the story of the Athletics making the playoffs, I think you tell a story about pitching. I think DVR is right. Like you say, Gage Jump, throws 20 starts in the big leagues this year, and they're all good. And Justin Sterner turns into an above average closer, and JT Ginn maybe is either a stud in the bullpen, or he becomes better in the rotation. There's Luis Medina and Elvis Alvarado, or some live arms that they can figure anything out on the command side. They could make the bullpen better than average. There's some guys here, but and Jacob Lopez and Jeffrey Springs are underrated lefties that seem to do better than we think they'll do year in and year out. So it's not awful, and the lineup is just, what can we say? I mean, I saw someone talking about whether or not Jacob Wilson could, hit 20 homers this year, and that's nothing that any projection system is projecting, but they are projecting 12 homers, and he makes a ton of contact. Any power growth from him gets it pretty close to 20. And if he hits 20, they'll have 6, 7 guys that hit 20 homers. I mean, it's a really good offense.
Yeah, love the lineup, but just a lot of questions about how quickly the pitching comes online, as likes to say. As far as the Angels go, can you give me a scenario in which they exceed expectations this year? They don't finish last. They even hang around and maybe flirt with a wild card, at least up until, let's say, August. Is there a world in which that could happen?
Exceed expectations, yes. a world where they flirt with a wild card, I'm going to let Eno handle that one.
Like we get to the deadline and the Angels are
All right.
4 games back of the last wild card, and Artie talks them.
Let me
into
tell the
buying.
story. Mike Trout is back.
Yes.
Mike
That's
Trout
what it has
is
to be.
back.
Yes.
There's
He's
one.
a 5-win
back, baby.
player. He's a 5-win, 6-win player. It's like his last resurgent year. Joe Adele keeps what he did last year. Maybe adds a little bit of flavor, a little bit better defense maybe. Zach Neto goes 30-30 and breaks out at shortstop. He's 25% better than league average. He's a 5-win player. He starts the All-Star game at shortstop. Nolan Schanuel hits 18-20 homers, added bat speed. I mean, these are
Grayson Rodriguez is an all-star. They win that trade.
No. Hold on.
Everything has to happen.
I'm trying to stay within things that I think could
you
happen.
just said Mike Trout is back.
Well, he was a bold prediction for me.
That
Is
could
that
happen.
Mike Trout is back. He's running faster than he's run in like 5 years.
Yeah, but so if he's going to be a 5-WAR player under this year scenario, how many games is he playing?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, but I think it has to be like 140 games or something. It would be a
That's
lot.
exactly, yes. And is he DHing?
Yeah, I mean because he wants to play center. I mean, you're
If he's
poking
playing that
holes
many
in my. I'm just trying to be. I'm talking about like sort of 75th percentile outcomes for everybody on the batting side, and then on the pitching side, this is where it falls apart a little bit for me. I like Soriano. Detmers is better his second time through. Kikuchi and Rodriguez combined for 250 good innings, 300 innings from the two of them. And somebody steps forward. Jack Kohanowitz is one of the biggest Stuff Plus gainers this spring. And he looks like he could be a viable 4-5 now. He's changed his arm angle. He's changed his pitch mix. And then George Clausen is a hard-throwing, not great command pitching prospect who is on the cusp. Ryan Zefferjon is an unappreciated reliever. He could actually even end up closing for them because they don't have anybody. Drew Pomerantz could get 15 saves from them this year. I'm trying.
And Anthony Rendon says, you know what, guys? I want to play again.
I'm coming back.
The end.
Hopium, just a heavy dose of hopium dripping with despair as Eno tries to grasp at straws and
Don't
spin the
poke
yarn.
holes. Mike Trout's playing 140 games, but is he DHing? Is he in the field?
Don't look at how many he's played in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen needs a few of those underappreciated guys to step up, and Walbert Urano is popping in your model. He's going to make the opening day roster. That certainly helps. It's a rough look for the pitching staff. I'm scared for Angels fans as a result of how that thing's built right now.
Yeah, I wonder if Uranus sneaks into that opening day rotation. Is that
But
possible?
they can exceed, 63 wins? They could win a few more games than that. But to talk them into a playoff spot is a tough talk.
I mean, that's like 20. You're trying to give them 25 wins.
It's pretty much impossible to talk that into existence, I think. But all right, so we're all on the Mariners to win the West. So to recap it quickly, I have the Red Sox, Tigers, and Mariners as the 3 division winners. Eno went Orioles, Tigers, Mariners. And Britt, you went
Toronto, Tigers, Mariners.
Okay, so a lot of overlap on the Tigers and Mariners. If you're wondering where things are going to go wrong, probably right there where we're all agreeing on something. Wild cards for me, Yankees, Orioles, and Astros. I don't know why I still believe in the Astros. Maybe I'll outline that with my awards in just a minute.
Yankees, Orioles, Royals.
Yankees, Orioles, Royals for Britt and Eno.
Blue Jays, Red Sox, Royals.
So you have the Yankees missing the playoffs.
I do.
Wow.
I had to put some surprise in here. Dude, we can do chalk here all the time we want,
True.
and we're
True.
wrong. We're wrong when we do chalk, So
Yeah.
Chalk.
I threw a
Projections are
little
wrong.
non-chalk in there.
Chalk all day. I need some tea. We have awards to get to, and then I'm going to get a big glass of tea and try to save my voice for the rest of the week. But let's get to some awards. Rookie of the Year in the AL. I'm going Chase DeLauter. I think a lot of what's happened to him as a pro has been injuries upon injuries. I think he's important to the Guardians. I think they're going to let him rip in the heart of that order. And I think he actually hits the ground running right away. I don't think in terms of odds he's anywhere close to the favorite to win it, but I think he has the skills to hang around. I mean, there are two guys coming over from Japan that are pros that are more likely to win it than DeLauter, but 140 plus games from Chase DeLauter. I think he could even be as productive as a hitter as Kevin McGonigle, which is really high praise.
Yeah, I was looking at McGonigle. I was looking at Tatsuya Imai, but I chose the other Japanese import in Kazuma Okamoto. I just love the fact that he makes contact and he has power and he has defense. He's going to play for a high-profile team. I think he's going to play every day. He had a good spring. I think he's set to do well here in the big leagues.
I'm going to go with one of my picks from last show as what were they? What did we deem them last week? They were underrated or they were picks to click kind of breakouts.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Samuel Basayo, the Orioles. I think he's going to get enough at bats. The power is there. I think he's going to put it together. And as we mentioned, their lineup is so good. It's not a case where he's going to get pitched to. You got way too many bats. So I think he's going to get the opportunity to shine. So I'm going to go with Basayo.
I like it. Spicy, and it stays in line with previous calls. Well done. On the Cy Young front, I think it's Garrett Crochet. It's very hard to win 3 Cys in a row. Tarek Skubal absolutely could do it. The last time we saw someone win 3 in a row was when Randy Johnson actually won 4 in a row between 1999 and 2002. I think it's apples to apples. Pick your fighter. They're both amazing, but for me, Crochet is going to get it done this year. It has to fit into my Red Sox win the AL East narrative.
I like that.
I'm going with Crochet too. The only thing I can add is that I almost voted for Crochet over Skubal last year with my AL Cy Young vote because once you factor in the strength of opposition, Crochet faced better opposition and had very similar numbers, very close numbers to Skubal. I don't know how that'll manage going forward. It just means that Crochet isn't worried about the AL East going forward, and I guess this is projecting Skubal to stumble in some way, maybe just health-wise. But Crochet for Cy.
Or maybe the voters just being on board with the East. If the East does put 3 teams in the playoffs or has 4 teams in the playoffs as the bold prediction,
and their numbers are really close, then it's like, oh, but Crochet did this in the hardest division in baseball. Yeah.
Right. I just think it'll be easier for people to see it if the division is that tight.
You guys have voter fatigue. I'm going Skubal. If the Tigers are going to win the division like we all predicted, Skubal's going to have to be Skubal. So, and you know what? Anyone who brings their Cy Young Award to an arbitration hearing where they thoroughly crush the Detroit Tigers, this guy's going to be motivated to go out there and make record money. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I think he's going to continue. It's very hard, like you said. It's hard to win 3 Cy Youngs, but I don't know. I think he's a special talent. I think we're going to see something real special.
Hard to argue with that. I took Skeens on the NL side, Britt, so it's
the same
fine.
thing.
Chalk is absolutely fine. MVP, my bold prediction was Yordan Alvarez wins the AL MVP this year, so he's my MVP pick. I think that's where the Astros' faith comes from. If Yordan Alvarez stays healthy and just does stupid things in the heart of that lineup, it elevates them to that level where they do get into the playoffs. People are going to look at that supporting cast and say, holy cow, he did that. He put up Aaron Judge-like numbers, but not in the Bronx. I think that's sort of how it actually happens for Yordan.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of staying healthy is the big one. I mean, last year, Bobby Witt Jr. Came up 2 wins short of Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge has had some health issues in the past, and this is a little bit of a bet on Bobby Witt just taking another step forward. He's 25 years old. I don't have anything I can really circle. Yes, he had a really great spring, and yes, he struck out a little bit less and walked a little bit more and showed a little bit more discipline. I don't know how much all of these things are going to port over. I'm just thinking, dude has been great. He's been really, really good. And at 25 or 26, he's going to put up his best season. And he already has a 10.5 win season. So what does his best season look like? Is there an 11 win season in there? Like something, he could do something that would make even another Judge season seem like, let's the shiny new toy syndrome. But I just think he's an excellent player that's projected to be top 2 or 3, and he's just picking against Judge, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. It's Bobby Witt's award to lose. Also, if you saw him in the WBC, he just looks like he belongs in that same conversation with Judge. He's a star among stars. I think he's kind of the natural heir here as Judge ages, his injuries catch up. Like, it's going to be him. I'd love to pick like an unusual pick, like I mentioned earlier in the show. I think Roman Anthony has a chance. It might be a little early for that. We might be like more of a year or 2 down the line, but I'm going to go with Bobby Witt. We're going to have somebody emerge that we didn't think about previously, but to me, it's Bobby Witt Jr.
we're all stupid. Judge has 10 more WAR than Bobby Witt Jr. over the last 4 seasons combined.
And
Well, yeah, yes,
10 more.
but is he
10
going to
more.
have is he going to have 10 more in the next 4 years? We're
No, but
banking
just
on
like the starting point,
Yeah.
just for one more year.
Yes.
Like there's just no signs of decline from Judge
I
right
know.
now. He's just playing at just an absurd level.
we did have
Interesting. None of us think Cal Raleigh can replicate. I mean, I just think his body's got to be straight up
It's the
exhausted.
catcher factor.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to do that as a catcher.
We did have someone pointing out in the Discord that there have been 15 200 WRC plus seasons in the history of baseball, and Judge has 3 of them. So, Judge is otherworldly, and maybe shame on us for
We have
looking
voter
in the other
fatigue.
direction.
I can't believe none of us took Aaron Judge to win AL MVP. That is just ridiculous. I was counting
One
on
of you guys
you two.
would, yeah.
No, I was counting on you two to be the voices of reason, since this is where I threw my bold prediction on the MVP side this year. But guess I'll have to live with that one. On that note, we are going to go on our way out the door. Reminder, you can join our Discord. The conversation continues in there. Enjoy opening night. We are back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed it, drop us a like, leave a rating, or sound off in the comments. We'll see you next time.